Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Donald Trump is set to meet with Vladimir Putin soon. Will the talks bring an end to bloodshed in Ukraine? We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, tonight's headlines. US President Donald Trump's new tariffs hit over 90 countries, including EU member states. Poland's main stock market index hits historic value. And Russian soldiers arrive in Belarus for exercises at NATO border. Leaders of the US and Russia will meet soon to discuss the war in Ukraine. Could this signal an end to killing? Or will Russians attempt once more to sway Donald Trump's opinion? We're joined now by our correspondent in Kyiv, Alex Kadier. Good evening, Alex. So is this terrible war about to end? And how are Ukrainians reacting to the news?
Good evening, Maciej. Well, there is certainly a hope in Ukraine and certainly around the world that there could be a breakthrough following these talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, a breakthrough to bring an end to this terrible war. The feeling, of course, in Ukraine predominantly is that they will believe it when they see it. There have been many false starts when it comes to negotiations to end this war, and there is a feeling here that the Russian side has no desire to do so. Let's focus on those potential talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. There are still unanswered questions about what that might look like. The Kremlin saying they will happen in the coming days. First question, where might they happen? Well, the Russian president saying the UAE could be a venue for them to happen. Another big question about these talks, the format. Who will meet who? Who will be there? President Zelenskyy said that as in the discussions with the United States, there was talk of 3 different meetings. One, President Zelenskyy, President Trump. The other, President Trump, President Putin. And the third, Presidents Trump, Zelenskyy and Putin all together. Again, these formats not confirmed. President Putin saying he is not against meeting with Zelenskyy, but the conditions to do so do not yet exist. Clearly a lot of questions on this format. It would be the first meeting between a US and Russian president since 2021, since before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But of course, I want to bring you some reaction from right here in Ukraine. I spoke to Fedor Venislavsky, who's a member of the Ukrainian parliament, member of the Ukrainian parliament's defense committee, and I asked him what he thinks of these talks and if there is a desire for peace.
Trump is now trying to give Putin the opportunity, on the one hand, to save face before his electorate, and on the other hand, to demonstrate that if Putin does not listen to the recommendations of the United States of America, the consequences will be very negative for the Russian Federation overall.
So even some Ukrainian politicians seeing this as an opportunity for Vladimir Putin to end the war and potentially save face in doing so. But there is still a lot of skepticism in this country. Spokespeople from the foreign ministry saying that Russia has breached 25 previous ceasefire agreements. Therefore, the trust is simply not there. Now, of course, if a deal is reached, there will need to be concessions from the Ukrainian side. We heard that from the US administration. One of those questions, would Ukraine sacrifice territory in exchange for peace? Well, I put that question to Alexander Merzheko, who's the head of the Ukrainian Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. This is his answer.
Absolutely not. It's against our constitution. It's against the will of the people. It's legally impossible. It's politically, psychologically impossible. So I don't believe that we should even discuss this question in relations, for example, or negotiations between President Trump and President Zelenskyy and Putin.
So a staunch position from one Ukrainian lawmaker there saying territorial concessions are simply not possible. Nevertheless, Ukrainian public opinion increasingly open to some kind of negotiated settlement. We have seen here in Kyiv in the last few days, the skies have been quieter. The swarm attacks that we have seen in previous weeks killing dozens in this city have silenced for now. In Kyiv, but not elsewhere in the country, it has to be said. So the question, of course, now for Ukrainians, for the US trying to broker a deal, is what the concessions will be. And if the Ukraine will have to make a deal partially against its will, all of that will come in the next few days.
That was Alex Kadier reporting from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Alex, and stay safe. As Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are setting a meeting to discuss peace in Ukraine, European leaders are in close contact with Volodymyr Zelenskyy to coordinate the war-torn country's next steps. The Ukrainian leader has once again expressed his wish for Europeans to take part in peace negotiations. Kazimierz Wysiak reports.
The meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin could be a truly major breakthrough in the war in Ukraine. And while European leaders won't be present at that meeting, it doesn't mean they're not involved in the peace process at all. And that's largely thanks to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
We are already in negotiations on EU accession, therefore Europe must be a participant in the relevant processes.
The Ukrainian leader says he has discussed the next steps on the phone with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
I spoke with President Zelenskyy on the phone about US Special Envoy Witkoff's meeting with Putin. We are both grateful to the US President for his mediation efforts and remain in close contact with the US and our European partners.
Europe's position is clear. We fully support Ukraine. We will continue to play an active role to guarantee a just and lasting peace.
All of that messaging shows Europe is kept in the loop, if not by Washington, then at least by Kyiv. And that shouldn't really come as a surprise. Zelenskyy has a much different perspective on his European partners than the US president.
European states are, I would say, more natural allies to Ukraine. They share the pretty same security perceptions, and they see Russia as the most immediate long-term threat, contrary to what the US is saying. For now, China is their biggest priority.
The lack of mention of European leaders in recent communication from Trump also doesn't mean that he sees no place for them in any future meetings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
In fact, it may be the opposite. As he previously said, it would have to be European troops who would safeguard a potential peace deal.
We don't know who will be monitoring that ceasefire and how exactly. Because, for instance, we've had already the experience of having OSCE, but this is just a monitoring mission, unarmed mission, which can do anything if any of the parts is breaching the ceasefire, right? And when it comes to UN peacekeeping, I don't think Russia would agree to do that.
The United Kingdom and France have already said they're willing to put troops on the ground in Ukraine to safeguard a peace agreement under the so-called coalition of the willing. Poland supports the initiative, but it won't deploy its own soldiers there. Still, a ceasefire is the first step, and that rests largely on the meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Wysiak.
US President Donald Trump's 15% tariffs on most European goods took effect on Thursday. While the tariff ceiling sends a clear signal to traders after months of uncertainty, key questions regarding the deal remain unanswered, specifically the status of the car import levy. Our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins, investigates the details of the EU-US deal from Brussels.
After hours of dialogue, dozens of flights and one fateful handshake in Scotland, the first tangible outcome of the EU-US trade deal has taken effect. As of 6 a.m. Thursday morning European time, most imports into the American market were slapped with a 15% tariff. And while this is good news for traders on both sides of the Atlantic as it brings stability to this trillion-euro transatlantic relationship, cracks still remain regarding the details of the EU-US trade deal, which was firmed up by US President Donald Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, speaking on behalf of the 27 EU member states roughly 2 weeks ago in Scotland. One of the most pressing issues is regarding that political agreement which underpins what was agreed upon by von der Leyen and Trump. We heard a senior EU official state only days ago this agreement was almost 95% completed. It essentially sat on the desk of US President Donald Trump waiting to be signed, sealed and delivered. TVP World asked the European Commission at a press conference on Thursday what the status purpose of this document was.
I really think the question should be directed to the US at this point. I mean, I can only agree with that assessment you just presented. I mean, on substance, the vast majority is agreed, and from our point of view, we've made very clear where we can and can't go. Now we look forward to our American counterparts doing the same.
Now, other major issues that still haven't resolved are the status of the automotive industry. Cars are still being slapped with a 27.5 import levy when they enter the American market. We know Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated in Scotland that cars would be protected by this 15% ceiling. That spokesperson Olaf Gill did state on Thursday that he is expecting an outcome soon regarding the automotive industry, as well as other commitments. Trump threatened earlier this week in an interview with CNBC that he would impose a further 35% tariffs on the EU if those billion-dollar investments in the realm of energy as well as business are not made. Many in the Belgian capital are wondering whether it is the beginning of an end to the saga or just another chapter. Angela Scoogens from Brussels for TVP World.
Poland's stock market is making headlines as the main index passed a threshold not seen since 2008. What's driving this optimism? Jan Kennedy knows the answer.
The Warsaw Stock Exchange's index of largest companies, the Big 20, surged to its highest level in years on Thursday. Finance and Economy Minister Andrzej Domański was quick to celebrate the milestone in a post on X, pointing to Poland's strong economic indicators.
WIG 20 has broken the 3,000-point mark and reached its highest level since 2008. A 37% rise in the index this year reflects the strength of the Polish economy, accelerating GDP growth alongside falling inflation.
Another reason for the market optimism, apparent progress in peace talks regarding the war in Ukraine, with US President Donald Trump set to meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in the coming days.
Markets are interpreting the signal as a potential sign of incoming peace in Ukraine. And of course, such an interpretation is bullish for stock markets.
Investors reacted with joy not only in Warsaw. All CEE markets were up on Thursday, and so were major European indices, as well as the Moscow Stock Exchange. And there's another factor at play. Thursday also marks the beginning of a new trade world order, as Trump's reciprocal tariffs officially kick in, providing the markets with some much-needed certainty.
Uncertainty, which we've had for several months, is always harmful for the market. That's why now, when it seems the trade war might be avoided, the outlook is more positive.
Still, the 15% levy on European goods is expected to weigh on economic growth in Poland, albeit to a lesser extent than in Western Europe. For TVP World, Jan Kennedy.
Russian soldiers are being deployed to Belarus ahead of joint military exercises Zapad 25. Although dubbed defensive by the Kremlin, the large-scale drills are designed to test Moscow and Minsk's offensive capabilities, including potential nuclear missile use. Zuzanna Jurek brings us this report.
Moscow looks west, or at least it attempts to, as it gears up for a series of military drills, known as Zapad or West in Russian. These joint exercises carried out by Russia and Belarus date back to the Soviet era, and they do not come as a surprise to the NATO alliance.
The nature of the exercises matters to us, which isn't anything unexpected. Yes, the drills are directed towards a possible conflict with the West, and their algorithm is based on this scenario.
Though not novel, this year's exercises were said to see the largest mobilization since 2021, when 200,000 troops were involved. Questions swarm, however, as back in May, the Minsk regime announced a scale back in the number of participating soldiers.
We are changing the parameters of the Zapad 2025 exercises and moving them inland. What changes in parameters will there be? First and foremost, the number of participating troops will be reduced by almost half.
Though it is difficult to confirm how many troops will eventually be involved, security experts expect these exercises to be scaled back compared to previous editions.
According to Belarusian officials, this will be around 15,000, 40,000 of troops.
Alarm bells also rang, as these exercises are not only fashioned to test out operations on terrain akin to that of NATO's eastern flank members, but also because, as experts point out, Russia looks poised to test its nuclear capabilities.
Already in 2009, Russia and Belarus were training a nuclear strike on Warsaw.
Poland and the Baltic states view these exercises as more than just routine drills. They see them as a rehearsal for potential blockade or invasion. This includes fears of a potential strike through the Suwałki corridor, a narrow stretch of land connecting Poland and Lithuania that lies between Russia's exclave of Kaliningrad and Belarus.
From the NATO perspective, NATO and especially the United States and allies on the eastern flank like Poland have been working very closely together to monitor the exercise, see what's true and what's not true about what the Russians and Belarusians are claiming. But the international situation could not be more tense.
And the tensions appear only to be growing. Just a few weeks ago, the new commander of NATO forces in Europe, General Aleksis Grynkewicz, confirmed the US assessment, indicating that Russia could be ready for a conventional confrontation with Europe as early as 2027.
The worst case scenario we have to obviously be ready for is the Russians do use this exercise as an attack on NATO. But it's very, very unlikely that using this exercise to again do test runs of what they might consider doing in 2026 or 2027 in the future.
For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Katowice in southern Poland saw a clash of chess titans on Thursday. The reigning world champion Łukasz Domradziu faced a Polish grandmaster Jan Krzysztof Duda in a speed chess match. Who won the game? Anastasia Janchenko has more details.
Facing each other on the chessboard, two chess stars finally met on the Polish stage. The world number one, Indian Domradziu Łukasz, and Jan Krzysztof Duda, Poland's most outstanding and youngest grandmaster in recent years.
I've played chess since I was 5-year-old. I got attracted to the game back then, and now it's, basically it has always been my, lifestyle, my way of living. I can't really see myself, without playing chess to some extent.
Both masters played Blitz, a fast-paced version of chess where each player has a very limited amount of time to make all their moves. The entire game is usually 3 to 5 minutes long. The intense match ended in a win for Jan Krzysztof Duda, a top player in the global chess rankings. He was the first Pole to surpass the ELO rating of 2700, called the Super Grandmaster category, which means he has reached the highest tier in chess.
It's not math, it's not physics. Chess is more than that. It's just a game. It combines both, logic and psychology.
In recent years, interest in chess has grown rapidly in Poland. The country boasts one of the largest chess communities in Europe, with over 40,000 registered players in International Chess Federation categories and more than 200,000 people engaged online. The local authorities in Katowice, the southern Polish city that hosted the match, have introduced chess as a subject in some schools.
We have tournaments for kids in schools, but also what is very, very important, we are promoting chess in education in schools of Katowice. 50% of schools started to have chess classes in the city, in the elementary schools.
And more young Polish talents are emerging and getting involved in the sport.
Chess is a very smart game, very strategical game. I like the rivalizations between my opponents and me.
It gave me opportunity to learn, patience, logical thinking, and I love the game.
For TVP World, Anastasia Janchenko.
Donald Trump wants to meet with Vladimir Putin as soon as next week to discuss the war in Ukraine. But does this mean the war is about to end? We'll talk about it with our guest, Diane Francis, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Good evening.
Good evening.
So $1 million question in the beginning. Will the war in Ukraine end next week?
Well, it was supposed to end on August 8th, tomorrow. Instead, we got notification that Trump is going to meet with Putin, possibly, and that his subordinate Witkoff has met with him to sort of clear the way for this. So, another Trump deadline of October 8th, demanding a ceasefire by Russia, has come and will go without any satisfaction. And they're just kicking, and Putin has just kicked the can further down the road by promising a summit with Trump. And my hopes are not terribly high that will result in any kind of ceasefire, but I hope I'm wrong.
So about these promises, what is the US willing to offer Putin and what the Russian can do in return?
Well, so far the United States hasn't really shoved down Putin's throat all of the things he should. Russia is under the impression, possibly because of omission as well as maybe some promises ineptly made by the Americans, that NATO will not accept or have Ukraine as a partner, that there isn't necessarily got to be recognition of the territory was captured and belongs back to Ukraine, or that a security force must be in place before the whole thing stops. I mean, it seems to be one demand by Ukraine, valid demand by Ukraine after another, has just been glossed over, dismissed, or maybe secretly sworn off by the Americans. So we'll have to see. Everything that Trump has done has been, actually embarrassingly, ignored by Putin. And the bombing is just continuing of Ukraine.
And yet, well, we've been talking about a diplomatic solution to end this war for a very long time now. And the sudden decision of a Trump-Putin summit comes as an absolute surprise, at least to me. Now, what happened? What do you think that really happened? And how to explain this turn of events?
I don't understand any of it. I don't understand why, instead of announcing he's going to meet with Trump, with Putin, that Trump wasn't, jumping up and down screaming that his deadline was tomorrow and he better meet it with a ceasefire. I don't understand that. However, a lot of this is performance. It's theater. It's political theater. And, having a meeting, a summit, is a huge victory for Putin psychologically, makes him think he's one of the big boys when he's really not. For Trump, it also changes the conversation in the United States away from Jeffrey Epstein and other things that maybe he doesn't want discussed a lot.
A win-win situation then. Well, last time we've talked, about a week ago, I asked you about the Polish Prime Minister's words, who said then that the war could end soon, and I also asked you whether he had some intel from the Oval Office maybe. Well, you found that improbable then for obvious reasons, but maybe this whole negotiating process, in fact, is well coordinated with the Europeans. What do you think?
Well, look, I'm not discounting the importance of a summit, and I'll tell you what's very tricky for Putin. We have a very volatile, emotional, and upset President Trump, and he's going to get in a room with him. And, I think Trump is going to be pushed and pushed and pushed by his own Republican Party, as well as the West and Europe and Ukraine, to be tough about this. Enough of these ceasefire deadlines being ignored and the bombing and continuing of women and children. And so, it could be it could backfire on Putin quite spectacularly. Now, I'm not expecting the cameras to be on the whole time they meet. But that would be great because, Trump is capable of anything, and Putin would deserve to get to get really dressed down for what he's done. And I can't even guess what's going to happen.
Me neither. Volodymyr Zelenskyy wrote today that, let me quote, "The war is in Europe and Ukraine is an integral part of Europe, and we are already in negotiations on joining the European Union. Therefore, Europe must be a participant in the relevant process." The question is whether Donald Trump sees it the same way. Would he be keen on sharing his, well, I guess, his peacemaker's glory with all the Macrons and all the stormers of Europe? What do you think?
I don't think Trump's a problem. I think Putin is, because he can, he will have more people that he has to talk around and convince than just Trump, who doesn't necessarily know all of the background and the details. What I understand is that Trump read out his phone call and the promise, the pledge to meet in a summit to Zelenskyy. So he brought him into the process, but not directly. And I think additionally, the text was sent on to the European leaders. So he's not operating in isolation, but he is the advanced troops, shall we say, in whatever attack or deal is going to be talked about with Putin.
So would this summit, this meeting, have any value if President Zelenskyy is absent from negotiations?
Well, I don't think he's going to be invited to be there. I think that Trump pretty much now knows, the brief, what he's got to be asking for, and he is really quite upset that Putin has just, disregarded all of these ceasefire requirements and is being so predatory and homicidal in his warfare. So perhaps, and of course, the benefit already is being seen in the markets, as your previous reporter showed, and the markets are up slightly because it is a good sign, not a terrific sign, but it's a good sign that they're going to meet. And that means that there'll be, something that will arise out of it, maybe some kind of a peace deal for the moment with talks to come or something. But hopefully this crazy on and off again of promises, demands, ignoring, moving nuclear reactors, having military assaults in Belarus to scare everybody and raise the pressure. This has got to stop. And I think the markets are hoping and saying that, maybe we are starting the beginning of the end.
But you're very skeptical about this meeting next week. What would it mean for Donald Trump's public image if peace negotiations with the Russians lead nowhere this time as well?
I think he's got to come back with something. I think if he's going to be meeting with him one-on-one and a press conference in front of cameras afterward, or not, doesn't matter. But he's going to have to come away with something. And the only thing that I think that he can easily get is Putin could promise ceasefire. He could promise a ceasefire for a certain duration, then break it down the road when everybody's forgotten he made the promise. I don't know. But, Trump has got to be, and certainly the people around him are extremely upset and impatient over all of this playing around that Putin has indulged in.
So, Leslie, if Putin indeed gets his ceasefire on term he likes it to get, the proposal, the last US peace proposal, included Russia keeping all the territorial gains and the US lifting sanctions. So is this still on the table? Like Russia, basically winning its war of aggression and going back to business as usual with the West?
For Putin, that's not on the table. He's already made it very clear to the American negotiators, including Witkoff and Trump indirectly, that he's going to keep what he's stolen, all of it, 2014 and 2022, and that they can't push him around and they can't join NATO and all that sort of thing. So his halfway measure would be to say, okay, I'm keeping everything I had. I'm not paying reparations. I'm not assuming, guilt in any way, shape, or form, but the line stays where it is, and that'll be a ceasefire. Trump cannot accept that. If he does, he's really, really disappointed the world.
Diane Francis, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, was our guest this evening. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching and stay with us for much more news and talks here on TVP World.